In the heart of Kaduna, where the aroma of spices dances through the morning air and the call to prayer echoes from distant minarets, lived a young woman whose hands could turn flour into magic. Her name was Fatima. She wasn't just a baker. She was an artist, a soul who poured her dreams into dough and shaped her pain into pastries. But Fatima's story was never sweet from the start. It was bitter, kneaded by struggle. And later, scorched by betrayal. Her bakery, Zuma Crumbs, sat quietly in unworn Rimi, tucked between an old tailor's shop and a noisy pepper seller. It was barely 10 feet wide, with a wooden sign and a cracked glass display case, but people lined up every morning for a taste of her famous vanilla pistachio puff buns. But behind her gentle smile, Fatima hid scars. Scars left by a father who vanished when she was 12. A mother who blamed her for everything that went wrong. And a dream she was told no woman in her family had the right to pursue. Her only refuge was baking. Though never shouted. Butter never judged. And every night, by candlelight, she would write new recipes in an old notebook she called My Diary of Dreams. Then, one rainy morning, he walked into her bakery, tall, charcoal-skinned, with a quiet voice and eyes that didn't blink too much. "You baked this?" he asked, holding up a flaky croissant like it was made of gold. Fatima nodded, wiping flour from her cheek. "I'm Idris," he said. "I've eaten croissants in Paris. But this is different. This is love." She laughed. That laugh would change everything. What Fatima didn't know was that Idris wasn't just any man. He had a past that could burn her whole world down, and yet, the fire had already started. Fatima never believed in fairy tales. Not after the things she'd seen. But the way Idris spoke to her. It was like her spirit had been starved and his words were feeding it. He started showing up every morning. First, just to buy pastries. Then, to help her mop the floor. Then, to talk. In 2 weeks, he'd become a part of Zuma Crumbs. In 1 month, he'd become a part of her life. One Sunday, he brought her roses. Fresh, red, and wrapped in brown paper. "You deserve beauty, Fatima. Even if you bake all day and forget you are part of it." She didn't know what to say. So, she said nothing. She just baked for him, and then came the kiss. It was behind the bakery, right after the power went out and they were laughing under candlelight. Soft. Slow. Like a promise. From that night, Fatima was no longer just baking pastries. She was baking with a heart that beat faster than a mixer on high speed. But love, as sweet as it seems, can sometimes rise too fast and collapse from within. One Thursday, just before dawn, a woman entered her shop. Dressed in flowing ankara. Tall. Beautiful. Angry? "So, you're the one," she said, slamming a ring on the counter. Fatima blinked. "The one who thinks she's dating my husband." Silence. A long, cutting silence. "My name is Memuna. And Idris is mine." The word spun. Fatima's heart pounded like thunder against her ribs. She didn't believe it. Not Idris. Not her Idris. But Memuna pulled out a phone and played a video of their wedding. The vows. The kiss. The laughter. Fatima nearly dropped her tray. Later that night, Idris came to explain. But Fatima had locked the bakery. Sat in darkness. Eyes swollen. Hands trembling. "It was over between us," he said through the door. "She's lying, Fatima. I love you," but love was no longer enough. She felt like a fool. Used. Played. What she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. because the real betrayal hadn't even started yet. And Memina wasn't just Idra's wife. She was about to become her biggest enemy and her fiercest competitor. The next morning, Fatima didn't open Zuma Crumbs. She sat by the window, watching raindrops roll down like tears on glass. Her dough stayed cold. Her ovens remained off. Her heart, hollow, but Kaduna never waits for sorrow. By evening, news had already spread. A new bakery had opened just across the street, Sweet Muna's Delights. People swarmed it like bees to honey. It was painted bright purple and gold, with a neon sign that flashed like it owned the sky, and the woman standing proudly at the entrance, Memuna. Fatima couldn't believe it. A woman who had shattered her love life now wanted to crush her dream too. Worse still, Memuna had her recipes, her exact vanilla pistachio puff buns, her chocolate chin-chin twist, even her signature sweet suya bread. How? The answer came painfully. Idris. He had stolen her recipe journal, My Diary of Dreams, the very book where Fatima had written every original idea she'd ever created. He had copied every word and handed it to Memina, for love, for revenge, for greed. Fatima didn't know, but something inside her broke that day. She didn't cry anymore. She baked, day and night, dough after dough. With fury in her fingertips and fire in her breath, she invented new recipes no one had ever tasted before: zobo glazed donuts with tamarind cream, Hausa mosa stuffed with date and spice custard, spicy ginger rolls with lemon honey drizzle. She stayed up all night, perfecting them, but still, Sweet Munas kept growing. Memuna had media influencers, fancy packaging, and Idris by her side, smiling like he owned the city. Customers slowly stopped coming to Zuma Crumbs. Rent piled up. Ingredients ran low, and one evening, when the generator failed and the fridge died, Fatima sat in total darkness and considered something she never had before: what if I leave Kaduna? But just as that thought passed her lips, there was a knock on her door. A man in black, holding an envelope. Fatima, he asked, someone has a business proposal for you. And it might just save your bakery or destroy your soul. Fatima stared at the envelope. The man in black didn't speak much, just handed it to her and left with a nod, like his job was only to deliver temptation, not explain it. Inside was a letter, typed, unsigned, and unsettling. We've watched you. We believe in your skill. Sweet Munas will fall. We can help. Meet us tomorrow, 10 p.m. behind Ewa Cinema. Come alone. No name. No contact. Just an address, and a promise that smelled like danger. Fatima didn't sleep that night. She kneaded dough at 2 a.m. with trembling hands, replaying the words in her head over and over. Should she go? She thought of her father, how he disappeared into the dark and never came back. She thought of her mother, how she warned her never to trust anyone who comes to you in shadows, but Fatima had lost too much. Her recipes, her love, her customers. She couldn't lose Zuma Crumbs. The next night, under the flickering light of a single street lamp, Fatima walked to the back of the abandoned Ewa Cinema. There, leaning on an old Datsun, was a woman in a faded hijab, scar over her left brow, eyes like steel. You came, the woman said, cracking a chewing stick between her teeth. Who are you? Fatima asked. The woman chuckled. People call me Auntie Knife, but you can call me partner. Fatima stepped back. You run a business. I remove businesses, Auntie Knife said coldly. And I build empires from their ashes. You want your bakery back? I can make Sweet Munas disappear. Customers, press, reputation. Even that thief you once kissed. Fatima's breath caught in her chest. At what cost? She whispered. Auntie Knife smiled. Just one thing. When you rise again, you rise with me. No secrets. No lies. No turning back. Fatima was shaking, torn between pride and desperation, but before she could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Two men emerged from the darkness, both armed, both staring at Fatima. She's not going anywhere, one said. Memuna says she talks too much. Fatima's eyes widened. A setup, but before the men could reach her, Auntie Knife moved like wind, a flash of steel. A scream. A groan. One attacker fell, holding his leg. The other turned and ran. This is the word now, baker girl, Auntie Knife said, wiping blood from her blade. You can cry in your kitchen, or you can fight in the fire. Fatima looked down at her flour-stained hands. She had never held a knife in combat. Only to slice cake, but something had changed in her. She didn't just want to bake anymore, she wanted justice. Fatima didn't sleep for 2 days, not because of fear, no, that was gone. What kept her awake now was the fire burning inside her. A fire that no oven could contain. Auntie Knife had given her a taste of the world beyond innocence. And it was sharp. Bitter. But necessary. They met again, in an empty warehouse behind Sabotage Market. There, Auntie Knife laid out the plan. We don't fight Memuna with flour. We fight her with fire. Influence. Strategy. Noise. And we begin by showing this city what real baking looks like. She introduced Fatima to her small crew, rebels of business. Misfit of the market, Kure, a tech wizard from Zaria, who once hacked into the Kaduna state website just to change his WAC score, Blessing, a former food stylist with a criminal record for identity theft, and the best eye for presentation Fatima had ever seen, Isaac, an ex-journalist turned whistleblower. Now a PR genius, together, they were the ingredients to something new. We are not just reopening your bakery, Kore said. We are launching the return of Fatima. A new brand. A storm. By the end of the week, flyers flooded the streets. The flames are back. Zuma Crumbs returns this Friday. Real taste. Real owner. Real heat. The media picked it up. Instagram Reels. TikTok teasers. Twitter trends, people buzzed. The story of the betrayed baker rising from the ashes took on a life of its own, and when Fatima finally reopened Zuma Crumbs, there was a line 2 streets long, but victory, like sugar, can hide poison. 3 days later, just as her shop reached its peak, chaos struck, customers fell ill, one vomited in the parking lot. Another fainted on the bus. The rest stormed out, screaming about poison chin-chin. Health officers came. Cameras too, they shot Zuma Crumbs down. Again, Fatima sat on the floor. Head in her hands, surrounded by spoiled pastries. They think I poisoned them, she whispered to Blessing. Blessing picked up a cake from the shelf. Sniffed it. Someone tampered with your flour, she said. This didn't come from your kitchen. This came from your enemy's hand. Fatima's heart sank. Memuna, but she had no proof. No camera. No witness, except one, a young boy who worked as a cleaner at Sweet Muna's. And who saw something he shouldn't have, a boy whose silence had been bought until now. His name was Sadiq, 14 years old. Skinny, with a mop of tangled hair and eyes that had seen too much for someone so young, he cleaned toilets at Sweet Muna's Delights, swept floors, fetched water, scrub trees, but he was invisible to most. That's why no one noticed him watching. He saw it all. The night before Fatima's reopening, a strange bag arrived at Sweet Muna's. Idris had brought it. Sadiq watched from behind the fridge, holding a mop. Inside the bag, 3 packets of powdered toxins. Harmless in appearance, deadly when heated. Sadiq didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing: Idris had delivered it. Memuna had directed it, and someone else, a man with a bald head and gold tooth, had laughed and said, "Let her rise. Then let her rot." Sadiq had kept quiet. He was poor, powerless, but when he saw Fatima crying outside her shut-down bakery, he cracked. He followed Blessing home that night and told her everything. "Why should we believe you?" Auntie Knife asked, folding her arms. Sadiq's hands trembled as he pulled something from his pocket, a recording device. A tiny mic he had stolen from the bakery's sound system. He pressed play. "Once this enters her flour, she's finished. Fatima likes to bake hope. Let's bake her a grave instead." Maimuna's voice. Idris laughing in the background. Clear. Undeniable. Fatima collapsed into a chair. Her heart had been broken once by Idris. Now it was shattered. Auntie Knife's eyes gleamed. This is gold. But Fatima shook her head. "We're not going to war the way they did." Auntie Knife frowned. "You want to let them go?" "No," Fatima said, standing slowly. "We do this my way. We don't fight fire with poison. We fight it with truth. With the whole city watching." The next morning, a post appeared on Instagram, on Twitter, then on AIT's local segment. It was a video, Fatima, holding the mic recorder. "They tried to ruin me. They poisoned my dough. But I have proof. And I will not be silent anymore." Then the recording played. The video went viral. Maimuna's bakery lost all credibility overnight. Customers demanded refunds. Bloggers dragged Idris through the digital mud. Reporters swarmed Zuma Crumbs, but the drama wasn't over yet, because the man with the gold tooth, the one Sadiq saw laughing, wasn't done. And he wasn't just a supplier, he was connected to something bigger, something that would make Fatima's heartbreak look like a small burn, because this battle was no longer just about bakeries, it was about control, power, and survival. Then the line went dead. Auntie Knife begged her not to go. Blessing said it could be a trap. Even Sadiq looked frightened, but Fatima had waited 18 years for answers. She couldn't walk away now. She left alone. Jaidan Ramfa was once a royal home. Now, it was a forgotten relic, walls crumbling, windows broken, the past trapped in silence. Fatima entered, her heart racing, and there he was, the man with the gold tooth, seated on an old wooden chair like he'd been expecting her all her life. "You look like him," he said, strong chin. "Same eyes." Fatima stepped closer. "Who are you?" He leaned forward. His breath smelled of old tobacco. "Your father. Owelukabir. He was one of us." Fatima froze. "What do you mean? One of you?" The man chuckled. "You think baking was his dream?" "No, child. He was part of the furnace. An underground network. We controlled markets, bread, grain, sugar. Your father tried to break away. Tried to go clean. He spat on the ground, so we made him disappear." Fatima's knees buckled. Her father hadn't abandoned her, he had been taken by the same network now trying to destroy her. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, The man leaned closer. Because you're better than him. Smarter. Stronger. Join us, Fatima. With your talent, you could own every oven from Kano to Cape Town. He pulled out a contract. Sealed. Blood-red ink. Fatima stood in silence. For years, she had wanted to know what happened to her father. Now she knew, and the answer came with a terrible choice: take revenge. Or walk away. She stared at the paper, and slowly, she reached into her bag. Not for a pen, but for the one thing she always carried, a wooden spoon. I bake, she said, her voice steady, no deals with devils. Then she turned, walked out, and left the gold-toothed man laughing in the shadows, but behind his laughter was a warning: you just made enemies, Fatima. And enemies always rise again, even from the ashes. Fatima returned to Zuma Crumbs in silence. No one knew what she had just faced. Not the customers lining up for her pastries. Not the influencers taking selfies with her meat pies. Not even Auntie Knife, who greeted her with a nod and a smirk until she saw Fatima's eyes. You saw him, she said. Fatima nodded. The furnace is still alive. That night, Fatima couldn't sleep. She thought of her father's face, how it had faded from memory. She thought of Sadiq, who had risked everything. Of Auntie Knife, who had saved her life, and she knew the furnace would strike back, and they did. 2 nights later, a fire broke out at her warehouse. All her flour, all her sugar, all her imported cocoa, gone in flames. Isaac arrived breathless, holding a torn note left near the wreckage. You could have ruled the ovens, but you chose to burn alone. GT, Gold Tooth. The city watched as Fatima stood in the ashes of her dreams again, but this time, she didn't cry. She turned to her team. If they want war, they get it. But not their kind. Ours. Auntie Knife smiled. Time to flip the recipe. The next morning, a message was posted online. In Fatima's voice, I will rebuild. Again and again. Because this is not just flour and butter. This is legacy. This is Kaduna. And I will not kneel to shadows. If you've ever been hurt, betrayed, burnt, this bakery is for you. Come stand with me this Friday at Riverfront Park. The Great Bake-Off begins. By noon, the post had gone viral. Again, thousands pledged support. Chefs from Lagos and Jos sent messages. Bakers from across the north donated ingredients. Survivors of injustice wrote Fatima letters of hope, but behind the buzz, the furnace was watching and planning. That Friday, as the sun blazed over Kaduna, the Great Bake-Off began. It wasn't just about food, it was a revolution. Music played. Stalls lined the streets. The smell of jollof pies and coconut buns filled the air. Fatima arrived in a plain apron, but she looked like a queen. She began to bake. The crowd gathered. Then a sound, boom, screams. A section of the park caught fire. People scattered. Fatima stood frozen. Then turned and saw something. A boy, Sadiq. He was running toward her, tears in his eyes. They took her. Who? Blessing. They took her. Fatima's heart dropped. The furnace had struck again, and this time they took one of her own. The flames at Riverfront Park were only a distraction. The real fire was happening somewhere else. Blessing had vanished. No trace. No message. Just Sadiq's wide eyes, and one last word from the kidnappers whispered in the boy's ear, tell Fatima. "We are not finished baking." Fatima called the police. They shrugged. No warrant. No evidence, so she turned to anti-knife, and anti-knife turned to her old world. They drove into the night, through back roads and forgotten alleys of Kaduna, past factories and silos, toward an abandoned grain depot near Rigesa. Kure had hacked into an old security network. Isaac had followed a payment trail that led there. Sadiq had drawn the building from memory. It was big, it was cold, and beneath it, a hidden oven. They broke in just past midnight, and what they saw inside wasn't just a bakery, it was a prison. Rows of underage boys and girls mixing dough under the watch of armed men, cheap labor, children with tired hands and blank eyes, and there, in the back, bound and gagged, was Blessing, her apron stained with flour, her eyes wide with fury. Fatima didn't wait, she charged. "Let her go." A man stepped forward, gold tooth flashing under dim light. "Welcome, daughter of Owalu." He pulled out a gun. "This is how your father died, you know. Trying to expose this oven, these secrets." He was going to blow the whistle. He pointed to the children. "This is the furnace. This is our dough. It never runs out." Fatima looked at the children, looked at Blessing, then looked at the gun, and spoke softly. "You've used fear to need silence. But today, daughter, used truth to bake war." She stepped forward, and behind her, unseen by gold tooth, came anti-knife, swift, silent, sharp. One move, the gun dropped, chaos erupted. Kure turned the lights off remotely. Isaac sounded an alarm that sent guards fleeing. Fatima untied Blessing, and Sadiq led the children out, one by one. Freedom, baked in darkness. By dawn, the police had no choice. They raided the facility. The children were rescued, and Gold Tooth, gone, vanished into smoke. Again, but the city knew now, the furnace had been exposed. Fatima stood in front of her shop that morning, holding a single loaf of bread. She broke it, gave a piece to every rescued child. "Eat," she said, "you're safe now. You are home." But deep in her heart, she knew the fire wasn't over, not yet, because some enemies rise again, even from ashes. The city of Kaduna buzzed with relief. The children freed. The furnace exposed, but beneath the surface, the shadows were stirring. Gold Tooth had disappeared. But his plan was far from over. That evening, Fatima received a chilling message on her phone. "You may have won the battle, but the war is just beginning. Meet me at the old tannery. Midnight, or watch your world burn." Fatima's hands trembled, but her eyes burned with resolve. She gathered anti-knife, Kure, Isaac, Sadiq, and Blessing. "This ends tonight," she said. Midnight. The tannery was silent except for the distant call of owls. Fatima stepped into the darkness, waiting. Suddenly, a shadow moved. Gold Tooth appeared. This time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, armed men. "You've meddled enough," Gold Tooth snarled. "Give up the bakery. Give up your fight, or lose everything." Fatima took a deep breath. "I don't bake fear. I bake hope." A gunshot echoed. Chaos exploded. Fatima and her team fought fiercely. Every punch, every dodge, every breath was a battle for their lives. In the climax, Fatima faced Gold Tooth alone. She lunged. Their struggle was fierce, like fire and dough, twisting and turning. Finally, with a powerful strike, Fatima knocked him down. Gold Tooth gasped, "You can't kill what's already burnt." Fatima stared. "But I can rise from ashes." Sirens wailed. Police arrived. arresting the men. Gold Tooth was taken away, his empire crumbling. The next morning, Kaduna woke to news: the furnace dismantled. The baker who saved the city. Fatima stood in front of Zuma Crumbs, the sun rising behind her bakery alive, her family saved, but her journey was far from over, because some recipes are never finished, and some fires never truly die.